Moving right along, we're going to look at successful planning steps. So these are the steps that if you want to become a pioneer and you want to reach that level, that fourth tier, that fourth business type, you want to try to find, okay, so Justin, you're talking to me about ideas, become a pioneer. Well, how do I do that in this competitive world? Well, here's the steps that you need to follow in order to make sure that that comes true, that you have a chance at that. We're going to pre-seed. And what I mean by pre-seed is we're going to think about the industry. We're going to think about the world. We're going to think about trends. We're going to think about what you know, what your experiences are, what your hobbies are, what you're good at, what your talents are, and we're going to brainstorm. We're going to think about what you can do to differentiate yourself from the world. What is it that you bring to the table? Because that's what matters the most. Whenever you find something that you're skilled at, that other people like, that's where your ideas can come from, and that's where you have that level of success. You're going to pre-seed. And pre-seeding means you're going to look at all of your options, lay them on the table, and try to go with the one you think makes the most logical sense. Now, sometimes you might lay some things on the table, and you might, let's say you learned HTML design in college, if you have a college degree, for an example. But you really didn't like it, but you're pretty good at it, and you got an A in that class. And you feel like you're going to bring something to the table that involves a new internet design company similar to Wix.com that's going to just take the world by storm. If that's what your idea is, even though it's something you don't particularly enjoy, then you need to go with that. So you lay all your options out on the table, and then you pick what you think will be the most successful thing. And then you move forward. Then we seed. From here, we start to brainstorm how is it that we're going to really differentiate and bring these trends to the table? How are we going to be able to target our audience? How are they going to respond? How are they going to stay? The most important part about a business strategy is getting people to continuously use your service. I think of it kind of like a one-hit wonder type band that makes one song that everybody loves for 15 minutes, and then the next thing you know, they're throwing their album in the trash can, so to speak. You don't want to be that. In order to seed, in order to think about really what you want to do, you want to think about long-lastingness and sustainability, okay? Now, that's just the very basic part of it. It gets much more complicated as you continue. But seeding, you want to develop that plan. You want to develop what's something that I can really bring to that table with this idea that I've selected that I want to work on this particular point in my life to really bring that to the table. And then after you have that idea and you have a few startup steps, you're going to move on to the startup phase. And you're going to think about bringing those ideas, bringing those positions to fruition. You're going to start up your particular idea, service, business, what have you, whatever it is. You're going to start thinking about strategies to start that and get the ball rolling. And in most phases, unless you have a lot of money to be able to invest, your startup doesn't have to always be thousands and thousands of dollars. People think startup cost. That's where that comes from. But the reality of the matter is you can get your family. You can get your friends. I know of a very successful trading card business owner who used to own a comic shop that he transformed into a trading card shop, and now it's still a trading card shop, but it's a gift shop for trading cards, and he has a restaurant that's now mostly just a restaurant, and he's making a killing. And for his startup, he had his sons and other members of his family, his wife, help him with his business. So he continued to grow and develop his business while teaching his family how to make a living and how to be their own business-type minded people. And they just continued to grow and develop. And now they're making way over $100,000 a year with this restaurant that's doing so well. And it's getting ready to expand into 4 different cities this year alone in 2015 coming up. That's wonderful. So you want to think about startup. And I don't want to get too far and rush this, but startup, think, who do I have who can help me? Do I have affiliates? Do I have family members who will be on board to helping me toward this goal? Do I have friends who I could pay $5 an hour to come and have fun with and help me toward this goal? You got to think about startup. How are you going to move forward with this? Because in order to start up correctly and really expand on your idea, service, or business, you have to have productivity. And productivity delivers emerging growth. And once you have that startup successful and you have anywhere from 3 to 4 people who are really working with you, working for you, you're going to start to see emerging growth and you'll see patterns. And here, this is going to be the cutoff sector to tell you whether or not these first 3 things were followed correctly. Because one of two things or both is going to happen. Either number 1, you did these 3 things, 1 or 2 or 3 of these things incorrectly, and your emerging growth stops and you don't do anything with this business idea or service. That's option number 1 if it fails. The second option, if it fails, is that there's simply not a demand for it. This is a supply and demand type economy. So what you're going to look at is, if you fail on this step right here for emerging growth and you don't grow and expand and whatever you're offering doesn't become popular and you don't start making money off from it, then most likely this is not where you're going to succeed. And this is where most people make this critical mistake, because they do their emerging growth factor and they get really invested in their idea, and then they move over to the expansion phase and they're expanding on an idea that is saturated. They're expanding on an idea that is not going to give them any kind of success whatsoever because there is no demand for it. And this is where most people fail and they lose hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, even millions in some cases. So here, this is the really key factor to this successful planning steps phase. You have to just emerge your growth once you get your startup, and once you figure out who's going to be helping you for a temporary point of time until you can start to emerge. Once you start to see that these success factors are kicking in, once you see that there is demand for this and you're starting to do okay, that's when you move from emerging growth to expansion. Whenever you're in emerging growth, though, you have to remember that you have to take it slow. You have to understand what you're doing and don't get over your head. One of the things that I remember most directly, I'm going to give you an example of an employee who used to work for me. I had an employee who worked at my trading card game shop, and I ended up letting him go. He went to be successful somewhere else. That's what I tell people when I let them go. It's time for you to go be successful somewhere else. And technically he was. He had an idea. And this idea was called Monthly Magic Box. And basically what happens is, in this particular example, so I'm giving you an example of how this takes place and how it really lifts off, okay? He had a Monthly Magic Box idea, and his idea was to send items to people who subscribed via PayPal for, I believe, $25 a month. He would send them 6 to 8 Magic the Gathering products, sleeves, cards, dice, memorabilia, anything that's Magic the Gathering related. And he called it the Monthly Magic Box. And what he did during the pre-seed and the seed phase was he came up with this idea. He started his website, and then he got people on board with that. And what I mean by that is he contacted people in the Magic the Gathering community on YouTube, and he sent them a free box. And he had those people unbox it, and then what did they do? Well, he sent them that box on the basis that if they liked the box, they would do a video about it. So these people who had hundreds of thousands of subscribers total on YouTube would see that this person would unbox this particular item, and they loved it. And so these are the people who are subscribed to these channels, and so they like the person, and so the person who they like seems to be having fun opening this Monthly Magic Box. So what happens? These customers think, well, I want to get that because the person who I'm following and I'm subscribing to on YouTube also wants this. So what happened? Emerging growth. Emerging growth took place. However, this work associate, he was not ready for the emerging growth to take place. He did not have the resources in place to be able to control it. What happened was there were hundreds and hundreds of customers who started to subscribe to the monthly Magic Box, but he had not worked out how to allow the product to be able to come in on a regular basis. And he wasn't able to fill those kinds of orders on a monthly basis. And so let's say he has 1,000 people subscribing to this monthly Magic Box. Well, what's 6 times 1,000? That's 6,000. He didn't have the kind of resources and connections to be able to get 6,000 items to be able to fill 1,000 monthly Magic Boxes every single month, despite the fact that people were paying. And that's what I want you to understand in emerging growth, is that you have to know and you have to already have your resources in place. Why? Because during this startup and emerging growth phase, he did not have or ascertain the resources to be able to meet the demand for the product. He did not have the resources. So please make sure before you move forward to expansion, you have these two things in check. You have to be ready for it. Otherwise, your business and your reputation will go right down the drain, because people will start posting YouTube videos complaining about your service. People will light up your Facebook page with complaints. You'll start getting bad ratings, and next thing you know, you have lawsuits on your hand from people who demand their money back, or they demand their product, and they're going to hate you. This is just one example. Now, I would like to obviously remind you at this point that this particular person, he no longer works for my company, and in fact, whenever he started this particular monthly Magic Box, he was no longer under my employment. So I had nothing to do with the monthly Magic Box. I was quite proud of this idea that he had, because I knew that he was very focused on the Magic the Gathering items, and in the community, he was very passionate about it. And so I was very proud of him for coming up with this idea, but I really felt like part of the reason why I let him go was because of his irresponsibility and his inability to get the job done. And so I really wasn't surprised when these two things didn't come to pass, because I knew his work ethic. And this is one of those things to where you really have to focus. You have to, whenever you're ready and you start that emerging growth, this is key and critical, people. Whenever you start to get affiliates, and what I mean by affiliates is, like, for example, whenever he sent that monthly Magic Box out for other people to unbox it on video and then talk about how much they liked it, that is an affiliate. That is someone who's helping expand your business. When you do that and you expand, you have to be ready to deal with the demand. Otherwise, your business will fail and you will not reach this step. He could be making easily 6 figures right now, but instead, he has lawsuits. Please keep in mind. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the expansion phase. Once you move to the expansion phase, you must be careful. You have to position yourself in a way that allows for continuous expansion. Let's say you reach this expansion phase, and let's say in this example, he had the resources to be able to keep up with the demand for 1,000 orders for monthly Magic Box every single month. Well, that would have been successful. However, what happens when people get tired of receiving the same general items every single month? These two steps right here are constant. Even companies like Walmart, Target, websites like Facebook, Twitter, people are talking about always whether or not these companies or businesses might fail. The reason why they don't is because they continue their expansion. Websites like Facebook continue to integrate with other technology and other applications in order to make it to where, in order to access a particular game on a phone, you have to have access to the Facebook account in order to register. Well, what does that create for Facebook? That creates sustainability, because it's a survival mechanism. It means in order to play this game, you have to be connected to Facebook. And it gives Facebook just that much more stability. Let's talk about MySpace for a second. So MySpace accomplished all of these objectives, and they reached success, but they kind of reached right here, and then they just stopped. So they let everyone make all their comments. People started hacking all the profiles. HTML code started getting hacked, so profiles started to get just hijacked. And then the next thing you know, expansion never really happened, because they never really looked at, okay, this is how the trends are developing, how are we going to control that? People started to get tired of having their MySpace page just full of glittering logos and light up this and light up that and all this music shouting at them. And the MySpace page started to become just filled with all sorts of junk that people didn't like anymore. And Facebook appealed to them because it was nice, it was clean, it was simple, it was fast, it was easy to understand, and it was new. And so what happened was, people jumped. They jumped over to the other idea. And so what you don't ever want is for you to be to the point to where you're no longer expanding, you're no longer compounding ideas and trying to come up with situations in which you, as a person and as a company and as a business, are no longer bringing things to the table. And I will give you one more example when it comes to expansion. Let's talk about Blockbuster. So what is Blockbuster known as? Okay, Blockbuster as a company is most known as their Blockbuster business brick and mortar stores that they had in the 1990s and early 2000s. What happened with Blockbuster? Blockbuster was a video rental / game rental in some scenarios place. It was where you can go to rent movies and then return them. Why did Blockbuster go under? They did not adapt to a growing environment. They did not adapt to a growing internet population that demanded to be able to rent videos and be able to see videos on demand via the internet. They did not grow with that at the time in which it was gaining that popularity. Blockbuster also, for many people who are very angry at them, was well known for making a lot of money by charging you late fees if you decided that you didn't want to return the item on time. So what happened? That's where places like Redbox came in. All of a sudden, throughout the years, you see all these places like Redbox that are next to, a lot of them started right next to McDonald's, so I think McDonald's probably had a contract with Redbox, and so you had these giant little Redbox vending machines in which you could rent a movie for, I believe, $1, and you could keep it until you wanted to return it, and then you return it. That's absolutely amazing. So a vending machine replaced a company. Why? Because the Blockbuster company did not expand into the internet industry and did not take advantage of that opportunity, that growing demand, and they were charging people late fees, and they were very, very unresponsive when it came to dealing with that anger scenario. So what they would do is they would charge you a late fee of $45 because you forgot to return that DVD for 2 weeks, and next thing you know, or the next thing they know rather, you are never going to be their customer again. So it turned people off. It turned them away. So during that phase, emerging growth happened. Blockbuster became popular. They expanded. And then whenever it came down to grinding the expansion phase and the success phase, continually trying to improve your business, they simply said, hey, we want to charge you more money because here's a late fee. Now give us your money. Those people never came back. Blockbuster went under. And the last thing I've heard from Blockbuster is, yes, they have video on demand. They have some cell phone companies have on their phones a factory default program that you can't uninstall that's called Blockbuster. Basically what that means is if you buy a phone, it comes preloaded. Some phones will come preloaded with a Blockbuster application that allows you to be able to use Blockbuster. I'm pretty sure Blockbuster paid what little money they have left in order to have this application from these cell phone providers. And what happens is people go on to these markets and they absolutely destroy Blockbuster's reputation. They destroy it. And it's just a bad scenario because they say, Blockbuster, we don't like you. Why can't we remove your app? This is terrible. We hate you. I hated having late fees. It's a reputation that is ruined. And you do not want to have a reputation that is bad because that will ruin you socially. People will just obliterate your Facebook account or your Android Market review page or whatever review page you're on. It will be bad. So here are the successful planning steps in a nutshell.